Why is it so difficult for Marvel Studios to just recast the Black Panther like they did with War Machine?
Because they stopped doing that. While Marvel Studios has quietly recast minor or heavily CGI'd characters, such as Fandral, originally played by Josh Dallas, or Thanos, originally played by Damien Poitier, they've mostly shied away from recasting superheroes. When Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans wanted to leave the franchise, their characters were given definitive endings and written out. It's easy to see why. These actors had become iconic in these roles, and had made previously B and C-list characters into household names. Any actor looking to replace them would always be compared unfavorably to them. And Marvel has enough obscure characters, and enough brand recognition, that they don't need to worry about who's going to play the next Iron Man or Captain America. There is no longer an Iron Man franchise. There's a Marvel franchise. But during Marvel's Phase 1, two actors did get recast. Terrence Howard as War Machine and Edward Norton as Hulk. These were actors who appeared in the first and second MCU movie, respectively, but were replaced afterwards. There were a number of reasons given. Howard was too expensive to keep around, he actually made more than RDJ for Iron Man. Norton was difficult to work with. But the biggest reason, the elephant in the room, was Ike Perlmutter. Perlmutter is currently the chairman and CEO emeritus of Marvel Entertainment, was the former CEO of Marvel Comics, and was basically Kevin Feige's boss before Disney bought Marvel. He is also an incredibly controversial figure among Marvel fans. Because Perlmutter is neither an artist nor a Marvel fan. He is a businessman who got his start in the toy business. To some extent he always saw the Marvel characters as life-sized action figures. The actors, their performance, and the story itself were always secondary. To him these movies were just CGI fests meant to sell toys. So when Terrence Howard asked for a raise for Iron Man 2, Perlmutter fired him, allegedly claiming that no one would notice because all black people looked the same. Needless to say Feige and Perlmutter did not see eye to eye, so when Disney bought Marvel Perlmutter was kicked upstairs, and Marvel hasn't recast a major character since. Which brings us to Chadwick Boseman. Not only did he give a great performance as Black Panther, and not only is he forever immortalized as the first black lead in a big-budget, critically acclaimed, superhero film, but he's also dead. In addition to all the problems you'd have trying to replace RDJ or Chris Evans, replacing Boseman would be seen as disrespectful to the late actor. So Marvel has decided to avoid the bad press by writing his death into the movies. Edit, as multiple people have pointed out, Black Panther was not the first black superhero to appear on film. However, Black Panther was the first film in which everything really came together. You had films like Steel, Catwoman and Spawn which were critically panned. Low-budget films like Blank Man and Meteor Man, which were comedies. And Blade, which ditched most of the characters' superhero trappings in favor of gritty urban fantasy, to the point that most moviegoers mistook it for an original property. Black Panther was the first film with a proper budget, good writing, and a black lead, that was undeniably a superhero film. The swap for James Rhodes, whatever the reason, was fairly easy. Terrence Howard had had a single appearance in the part, in a supporting/secondary role, and he never dressed up in the armor. The change still garnered some press at the time, as it was driven both by salary conflicts and problematic attitudes from Marvel honcho Ike Perlmutter, but most filmgoers either didn't know or didn't care, they didn't have a lot invested in Terrence Howard as James Rhodes. The same can be said for recasting Fandral when scheduling conflicts prevent Josh Dallas from reappearing in the second Thor film. Fandral was a fun but one-note tertiary character, and nobody had any emotional investment in who played him as long as he could properly swashbuckles. The swap for Bruce Banner was a bit different, but still pretty straightforward. Edward Norton's Hulk had been at the very beginning of the franchise, before anyone ever expected it to be a franchise. Some people don't even see it as an MCU movie, as very little except Thunderbolt Ross got clearly carried over to other films. It was also not that wildly successful a film, it did better, as I recall, than the previous cinematic version of the character from only a few years before, but not spectacularly, and a quick succession of Hulk films made recasting with Mark Ruffalo even easier. especially as Marvel was contractually prevented from doing another solo Hulk film, so the character was never going to be as prominent. T'Challa is something altogether different. Chadwick Boseman had strong, starring appearances in both Civil War and Black Panther, with powerful character arcs, and further appearances in Infinity War and Endgame. Replacing him with another actor, ESP, after his acclaimed success in successful films, particularly after his tragic death, would face a lot of emotional resistance from the fans, even if you came up. Chadwick Boseman is the face of T'Challa for a lot of people. Given that there are plenty of other Marvel properties out there, and plenty of other ways to extend the Black Panther legacy than simply having T'Challa wear a different face, sufficiently so that we're still getting a sequel, there's no major need to recast the role, and every reason not to. There's no difficulty. They could absolutely do it, if they wanted to. They could find a dozen different actors to take up Chadwick Boseman's role. They just don't want to. Viewers don't want them to. It would be seen as very disrespectful to Boseman. He didn't leave the role over contract disputes, or being a pain in the ass actor. He died after a protracted battle with cancer. He also happened to star in, perhaps, the most culturally important MCU film. Recasting him after the fact would not only feel in poor taste, but also place the actor in impossible shoes to fill. There's simply no reason for them to recast the role, and instead have the role shift to Shuri. At least that's what I expect they will do, as has happened in the comics. For two reasons. First and foremost, Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of T'Challa was iconic. He so perfectly played the character, that it's nearly impossible to imagine anyone else doing it. No matter how good the follow-up actor performed, it just wouldn't be the same. It would be very difficult to forget Boseman's performance as you watched his successor. The second reason is that our three characters from the original movie who lit up the screen. Any one of those characters can easily continue their original roles, don the Black Panther armor, and move the franchise forward. The people in question are: Danai Gurira as Okoye. Okoye is a member of the Dora Milaje, Wakanda's elite band of warriors. During the 5 years between Thanos' snap and the Restoration, she became an Avenger in her own right. Gurira's portrayal of Okoye shows the character's appreciation of the responsibility and nobility of her position, and she could easily carry that forward as Wakanda's next leader. Besides, Gurira and her stunt team have already proven themselves able to do amazing action sequences. She could step into the role and not miss a beat. Letitia Wright as Shuri. In some ways, the Shuri character is the opposite of Okoye. Shuri is irreverent, a bit flippant and in no way ready for the throne, yet she's next in line for it. It would be a great story for her to be a mess while grieving for her brother, while being expected to step into his shoes. It would be very interesting to see her try to act like her brother as she dons the armor, only to find that she's more successful in the job as herself. Wright's performance in the first movie and in Avengers: Infinity War was electric, and I found myself desperately wanting to see more of her. She's a strong candidate. The only reason that I put Shuri below Okoye is that Shuri very much has her own unique, enjoyable character, and it would be a shame for it to morph that character into something else that perhaps overshadows it. Michael B. Jordan as Eric Killmonger. This is the long shot, because the character had a strong death scene in Black Panther, and there's really no reason to bring him back, except Michael B. Jordan. Jordan stole the show in the original, as the character who wanted all the right things, but pursued them in all the wrong ways. Resurrecting him, this is the comics, right? And watching his journey to a hero could be mesmerizing. I leave Lupita Nyong'o's character Nakia off of the list intentionally, but she could be an option, as well. Nyong'o has an Oscar to her credit in 12 Years a Slave, so she obviously has the chops to be the lead. Unfortunately, she didn't wow me in the first movie like the others did. I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait to see which direction Disney/Marvel chooses to go.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future also. Don't forget to like and subscribe to you never miss a video.